right, I guess those 20 seconds are up. Hello and welcome to the TransForm Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined by Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation, and will actually be giving our presentation today based on a user question. So if you do have any other questions, by all means, send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com, or just type your question today into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. All right, so let's get started. Hello, Sarah, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear, and I can already see your screen.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. See slideshow.
All right.
That's okay.
Looks good.
All right, welcome. Welcome to TransForm Tuesday, everyone. We had a question come in recently asking how to programmatically capture the location and time information at the same time using TPL. The user had individual buttons that were grabbing the time and the location, but they were concerned that that their users might choose to capture the time later when they really wanted all of that information captured at the same time. So today we're going to discuss how you can do that. So here's the scenario. Your user is using TransForm on site, and you want to capture both the time and location when they do something like tap a button, change a value in a field, take a photo, etc. So I've created a small simple example today. It's just, I'm calling it Timesheet. It's going to do three things. It's going to clock in, it's going to clock out, and we're going to have a submit button on it so that you can just submit your timesheet and it gets uploaded and there's no additional work that needs to be done there. So as part of that example, I apologize. Hold on. I have a cat that keeps climbing all over my keyboard.
That's an occupational hazard during our
it is,
our
and
work from home
I don't have a
sort of period.
I have no office with the door, so unless I lock him in the bathroom, which would be very loud.
It would sound like a howling mess. Yeah.
Anyway, back to what the data we need to capture at this timesheet. We need to capture the start time when they click the clock-in button. We need to capture the location when they click the clock-in button. And we also need to capture the end time and their location when they tap the clock-out button. To do this, we're going to use TPL and action buttons. So with respect to TPL, there are a few functions that we're going to use today, and I wanted to give you guys an overview of what they are now so that when you see them later, you recognize what they are. So the first one is the now function, and that just captures the current date and time. And then the next three are going to be used for capturing the location. And these three functions need to be used in a specific order. So GPSStart enables GPS location capture for your form. By default, we do not actively track the user's location in TransForm. You have to turn that on because tracking GPS information can drain the battery, which is not great in cases where you might not even need that data. So to ensure that the user's device is not being needlessly drained of its resources while they're using it, we've added these functions so that you have to explicitly request these resources before you start using them. So GPSStart enables that location capture. GPSPosition returns the most recent capture of the device location, and then GPSStop turns it off. Are there any questions about that?
We already have our first question. Did you mean to spell position like that, or should there be another?
I totally did.
Yes. Oh, excellent.
Yep, there are no mistakes in this PowerPoint slide. The position, it should be position with an I, but don't worry, our demo will work.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you.
Yeah, so please properly spell position. So in addition to those functions we're going to use, we're also going to use several events in the form, and these are listed here. There's an onload event, which is triggered when the user first opens the form. There's also an onFinished event that is triggered when the user returns to the list of forms screen. A note on onFinished, it's not always called, and in cases it's not called, as if in situations where the user just closes TransForm, we don't know they left, so onFinished won't fire. So the only reason we're including it here is just to make sure that we stop GPS tracking if they go back to the list of forms if that's an action they do. If they do something else that just like ends the application execution, then TransForm will no longer be using the GPS, so that's not really a concern here. And then the last event here is the on button event, which it applies to action buttons, and it's an event you can customize to add your own actions when a user taps a button. So let's do a live demo.
All right.
All right, so I have TransForm somewhere in here. There we go. So I'm up on transform.alphasoftware.com, and I'm gonna go to the designer. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna build out our form with those 3 items we had: the clock in, the clock out, the submit, and then places to capture our data. So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna add a blank form. I'm gonna go to edit form commands as opposed to doing quick start text, so that for those of you who are not familiar with edit form commands, this is another way to build your form. So first things I'm gonna do here is add the 3 buttons I need. So I'm gonna click the plus button. I'm gonna scroll down here. I'm gonna find the action button, which is a little circle pill. It says ABC action button. I'm gonna click that. I'm gonna add it. I'm gonna change the text to clock in. And I'm gonna give this action an action name. So the action name is really important. I can't emphasize that enough. If you want to use the on button event for an action button, you have to give it an action name. And there are some rules on the action name. It can only contain letters and I believe also numbers, but it has to start with a letter. Don't put underscores in it. Don't put spaces in it. Don't put periods or other symbols in it. It won't work. And unfortunately, at this time, we won't warn you that it won't work. It just, things will just not function. So I'm going to call this
camel case
clock in with a capital I. Was there a question?
No, so you're suggesting use camel case or something like that for action
Use
names.
camel
I think
case.
that's pretty much our
Yeah.
standard.
For those of you who love writing in snake case, which is the mixing of underscores with words, I love that. It always burns me. I always come in here and I always accidentally put an underscore in somewhere, and then I go to test my transform form and it doesn't work, and then I'm like, oh, I put an underscore in it. No underscores. So action name, no spaces, clock in. I'm going to add another button. This one will be called clock out. Action name will be clock out, capital O. And then the last thing I'm going to add in terms of buttons is a change status control. The change status control is a special button that allows you to change a form status when tapped. And what I want to have here is I want to change it to submitted. And I want to change the form instance so that it will not download to the filler if it's been submitted, because at that point, there's no way you can change what you've added to this form, the way we're going to build it. And then I'm also going to customize this status change message to just say submit. Oop, but I'm going to spell submit correctly. Oop, there we go. So over here on the right, we have our preview, we have our clock in, our clock out, and our submit button. I also mentioned that we need to capture data, and the only way to capture that data in this case is with some fields. So we're going to add our fields for the start location, the start time, the end location, the end time. And they're just going to be simple typed text fields. We'll call this one, let's call it start time. We will give it a field name of start time in camel case. We're going to add another one called start location and name it start location. And then we're going to repeat that for end time and end location. End time and end location. So some things that need to be enforced in this form, because we want to capture this data programmatically and we don't want the user to mess with it, is we need to make all of these fields read only. And that is done by just selecting yes for the read-only property. There's also this calculated option, which is set in the TPL code editor, and I'll point that out later when we go into it. So I'm just going to go through each one of these and set them all to read-only, so that they will capture our data, but the user won't be able to modify them, because we want them to use these buttons to set those values. And then finally, I'm going to wrap these 3 buttons inside of if statements so that only one of them is shown at a time, so that you can't change the clock in or change the clock out by tapping them again. And I'm going to use that using ifs. So if you go in, you click the plus button to add a command, you scroll down here, there's this question mark if. I'm going to select enclose. That's going to wrap the button in an if and end if condition. And then here in the test, for the first one, clock in, I want it to be shown if there's no start time yet. So I'm going to say hashtag start time, which is the field name. You can use this insert field name button to select the field name over here or any of them, and it will insert it for you, as you can see that there, but we don't need that in there twice. And I'm going to do double equals and then 2 double quotes. So I'm comparing stop time to nothing, the start time to nothing. And when that is true, the clock in button will be shown. Clock out should be shown if the start time is already set, but the end time has not been set yet, because we don't want them to change the end time later. So I'm going to add another if and enclose it here. And I'm going to say, we'll use insert field name this time. Insert field name, if start time is exclamation point equal means not equal to blank, and then 2 ampersands, meaning and then I insert another field name here. End time is equal to blank, then clock out will be shown. And then finally, for submit, it's going to be similar to the clock out, but it's going to use both if the start time and the end time are not set or not blank, basically. Then we will enable that. We will show that button. Let's do start time, not equal to double quotes, double ampersand, end time equal double quotes. So those are the 3 cases. Over here in the preview, just to give you an idea what it'll look like, I'm going to set this to true, this to false, and this to false. So this will be the state when the user first launches the form. After they tap clock in, it will be hidden and clock out will be shown. And then after they tap clock out will be hidden and the submit button will appear at the top. So it gives the appearance that this button is changing, but it's actually 3 buttons, which makes it a little bit easier to add our TPL on the back end. So that's our form. Do you have any questions about this?
So far, no questions.
No questions? All right. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to save this. Another thing I'm going to do here, I didn't do it when I first made this form, but I'm going to change the basic info, the display name, and the form ID so I can find them easily. So I'll go Timesheet TPL demo. I'm going to call this one Timesheet 2. So that's the name of my form. And now I'm going to go add the TPL to the events so that we can turn on the GPS, capture the position, capture the time, save that information, and then turn the GPS off when we no longer need it. And that is done in advanced features. Scroll down until you find enable custom code for this form type. And if it is set to no, click yes. And that will enable this button right here below it. This is edit custom code. And clicking edit custom code opens the TPL editor where you can add all sorts of fun things to your form to give it more than it already has out of the box. So I feel like the logical way to do this is to add the code to the buttons first. But because we also want to make sure we're turning the GPS on before we start using it, I'm going to start with load. So I mentioned earlier the onload event. Also, can you read this text real quick? Or is it really small?
It is, I'd hit up, yeah, make it maybe one size bigger so that,
All right, I'll make it a little bigger.
there we go. Yep.
There we go. It's gonna look terrible now because I've zoomed in 150%, but hopefully you can read it.
Thanks.
So in order to capture the GPS position, the first thing we have to do is we have to turn the GPS on. And that's done using the GPSStart command. So I'm gonna make a little space in here, and I'm going over here into this reference section in the functions list, and I'm going to scroll down here until I find GPS, which is somewhere, it's not date. I can't remember what we organized it under. Oh, it looks like it's not even there. Oh, that's not exciting. That's horrifying. Okay. So whenever I can't find something, I go to the documentation. So I'm going to go to
Alright.
documentation, Alpha
I just
Software,
self-add that to TransForm, so I'll make a note of that right now.
and I'll log those, and then TransForm documentation, or you can just go to documentation.alphasoftware.com and then click the Alpha Transform Help button right here in the banner, and this will take you here. And then I'm going to search for GPSStart because I do want to give you guys a little information about what that is. So I know it's in Transform Programming Language Overview because I made this page. But if you go to the Transform Programming Language Overview, there's a section on built-in functions. And in there you will find all the functions organized, I believe, alphabetically. And if you get on this list into the G's, you will
There it
find
is.
GPSPosition,
Spelled properly,
GPSStart,
too.
and
Yeah.
GPSStop. So the one we're going to start with is GPSStart. And it takes 3 parameters. They are optional. You do not have to specify them. I will let you guys come in here and read this description to determine whether or not specifying those parameters is needed for your use case. We don't need to specify them here. So we're not gonna worry about the values we pass in. We're just gonna get GPSStart. We're gonna put it here, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, done. That's all we need to do and load. We need to enable the GPS, and then we can move on. So now that I've added what I need here, I'm going to click save. And that's going to save our function or code here. If you don't click save and you click on something, Transform will ask you, are you sure you want to do that? Because I'm not going to save this for you. So just remember to click save. Another way to kind of avoid that warning is to click cancel if you decide you don't want to change something. So click save. The event will turn green if it has code in it. So that's our enabling the GPS so we can use the GPSPosition function. I also want to go into finish since we're looking at the form level handles here, and I want to add that GPSStop function. So if we go back to the documentation, down here, there is GPSStop. That's what we need to call to say, I'm done using the location services on this device, please stop tracking it. And that should conserve some resources for your users depending on what their needs are out in the field. So GPSStop added. I'm going to save that. So our load and our finished are all taken care of. That's all we need to do with those 2 events. Now we can focus on the button events for clockIn and clockOut. So let's look at clockIn first. So when we gave the action button an action name, that action name was used here. So you can see that clockIn is right here. If you ever change the action name, which I highly do not recommend if you've already put code in here, you will have to come back into the TPL editor and find that old code, which you can access by clicking on all code or blocks, I believe, to see everything that's in there. But just as a warning, if you change the action name, it doesn't update the original function, it makes a new one, and it keeps the old one around for you. So we need to do several things in here. We need to capture the GPS, and we need to capture the current time. And then we need to set those into our variables. So to capture the GPS, all you need to do is call GPSPosition with an open and closing curly or parenthesis. This will return the location that was most recently captured. It doesn't pull the GPS immediately at that moment, but depending on how quickly you're pulling while the GPS services are enabled, it isn't that much of a time difference from when it was last pulled. And for the purposes of this, I'm not super worried about the accuracy of a few milliseconds on this one. So that will return the current position. The other thing we need is the time, and I'm going to say time equals now. And now is available in this list. You can find it in the date functions in the functions list. You click on date, it'll. Oh no, it's not in here. Oh, okay.
Was it date or was it now?
It's time.
Oh, it's
it
time.
has to be time.
Yep.
No, it's not time. It is time. Time's at the bottom. There it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
So if you expand this, click the little plus button, it tells you that it returns the current date and time as year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds. This is going to read from the user's device. So just if like super heightened accuracy is required, it's going to rely a little bit on the user's device being currently synced with time. But that's what this is going to return. Oops. There we go. I apologize for that interruption. Grammarly is gone now. So this will get the current time when the user taps the button. This will get their position, and now we need to set the start time and the start position data. So that's as simple as saying hash start time equals time. So that will store the time in the start time control, and then for start location, we have to do a little bit of string building because the GPS position function returns an object that has a number of properties. And we'll scroll up here in the documentation again and go look at those. So GPS position returns the latitude, the longitude, the lat and long, which I did not realize we had, the accuracy, the altitude accuracy, timestamp, stamp, and an error message. If there is no errors, error will be blank, which is great, which is what we want. I was going to show you how to concatenate latitude and longitude, but we actually can just use this lat long value. So let's use that instead of trying to build a string. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to say location equals position dot, and I did copy that whole thing, but I just need lat long equals lat long, and then I'm going to go to start location, and I'm going to say equals loc, and that should be all we need to do here for capturing the time and location and saving it. So I'm going to do two things. I have to do the same thing over in the clockout button, but save the values in a different variable. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to save it. And that turned green, indicating it has been saved. And then I'm going to go to clockout, and I'm going to do something similar, but save things in the end time and the end location. So I'm going to paste what I copied out of our clockIn event. I'm going to change start time to end time and start location to end location. And because I know that at this point we're done, the user's not going to be able to do anything more with capturing location, I'm going to turn off GPS tracking. So I'm going to call it GPS stop here as well, so that we don't need it anymore. There's no reason to keep using it. So that's what we're going to do in this clock out. And I'm going to save. So that's the TPL. So when the form is loaded, we have to call GPSStart to enable GPS location tracking, so we can get the location when the user taps the button, the clock in and the clock out button. We want to call GPS stop if they leave the form for whatever reason, just so that we're not tracking it anymore. We also want to, in the two buttons, we need to get the GPS position, we need to get the current time, and then we need to save that into our variables for time and location. So that should be all we need to do here. So let's go test it. So I click the save button, I'm back here. I need to tap this click to save changes to upload everything into the cloud. And I hope that's
Whoa.
I hope that's
Okay. I've
irrelevant.
never seen that. That's
I
interesting.
have a form that's
That's what happens. You
that
do
I
with a live demo, I guess.
wrote
Yeah.
on purpose, and it might have just totally ruined
Oh,
this.
it's trying to sync that one. Yeah.
It's trying to
All right.
sync that one.
The
Oh,
broken
oh
one.
my. All right, so that might not work, but I built another form earlier um, that is identical, and except for the location part, the values will be slightly different. But I'm gonna turn on screen sharing on my mobile device here.
Great.
And we're gonna pretend that this totally worked.
That's what
And I
happens when you
didn't
do bug
I didn't muck
bug
it up
tracking just
earlier
before
with my
the oops.
broken form.
So,
Let's put that there. And I'm gonna maybe later. I was hoping that wouldn't do that. I'm gonna screencast here. I think
cool.
if I make this bigger, it will get bigger.
Yep.
So this is TransForm on my mobile device. I'm gonna add a form here. I'm gonna click refresh to make sure I have the latest data. Let's click OK. And look at that, our TPL demo did upload, so let's use it. I'm gonna tap on Timesheet TPL demo. I'm gonna go back to the other one. Let's go back in there and see why those if expressions were no good. And I'm gonna hit refresh here because I don't know if that's ever gonna finish on me. So go to designer. TPL demo, edit form commands. That looks right. Let's just add a little bit of spacing in here real quick. I don't see any reason why that would not work. I think that error that we saw earlier messed everything up. All right. Click to save changes. There we go. That upload worked. Let's go back in here and I'm going to go back to add form and just refresh that definition again so it gets an updated one. And there we go. So this is the demo we just built. So as you can see here, it only shows the clock in button because we don't have a start time or start location. And also end time and end location are blank. If I tap on those fields, notice that no editors are opening. I cannot edit these values. I cannot open these controls. But if I tap clock in, it captures the current time and that start location. And then if I tap clock out, it captures it again. Notice that a few seconds have passed here since I tapped this one. It's got the same location and now the submit's shown. So when I tap submit, it asks me if I want to upload everything or just this one form. I'm going to pick upload all because I don't have that many. And it's going to upload this to the server. It's going to tell me that it added those forms. There was another one that was created earlier, but we abandoned that. And I'm click OK. And now when I refresh, I should see the submitted timesheet demo disappear because we had checked that option to don't re-download this back to the user's device once it's been submitted. Okay.
Wow. Nicely done. And
Yep.
with 54 seconds to spare, that doesn't usually
54
happen with
seconds. So
demos.
get those questions in fast. I did want to show one more thing,
Okay,
if I
great.
can,
Mm-hmm.
and that is I can now go to the management console and just verify that that data had been submitted. So in this type of forms list, we come down here, we find our timesheet TPL demo. And this one right here that says submitted was the one that we just created. So that is the complete demo. All right. Dave, did I lose you?
I am still here. Sorry about that.
I'm done. That was the end of my demo.
That was it,
The
actually.
admin
You
console.
did actually lose me for a second. Something froze here
I
on my
did.
screen. But I'm all
Okay.
set now. Wow, that is the end of your demo at 6
Yep.
minutes past the 30-minute mark.
Right
Wow,
as
Sarah, thank you
Yep.
very much. That was a terrific demo. Really appreciate
Yep.
you going through all of that. If there are any questions, they don't seem to be any additional ones, go ahead and send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. Thanks very much, Sarah, for presenting. Thank you, everyone who showed up, those asked questions, and hope to see you next Tuesday at the next Transform Tuesday. Take care, stay well, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.